preaching with a golf club. You know.
I didn't know whether to turn it around or not.
That's fine. I started to say I don't like to tell blonde jokes. I just do, but I just. But I heard about this blonde convention that they got tired of being picked on, so they decided to have this convention, and they got this judge to come to the convention, and they said, look, we want you to meet with you so you can declare to the world that we are not dumb. And they were smart. He said, okay, I'm going to ask you one question. I'm going to pick at random one person. They have to answer the question. You get it right, I'll declare to the world, press conference, that you're smart. So he said, okay, here's the question. What's 5 plus 3? And he pointed at one blonde, and she said, 9. He said, I'm sorry, that's not right. And as this huge crowd said, give us another chance, give us another chance, give us another chance, until finally said, okay, I'll give you another chance. He said, what's 6 plus 3? And he pointed at another one. She said, 7. He's like, no. And then, give us another chance, give us another chance, give us another chance. And he said, I'll give you one more, but this is it. This is your last chance. He said, what's 7 plus 2? And before he pointed, one of the girls blurted out, 9. And the whole group went, give us another chance. So here we are still doing blonde jokes because of that. See? I want to welcome you to the first Love Your Life workshop of 2013. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Yeah. Love the person you are. That means be gentle with yourself. Show compassion to yourself. Forgive yourself. And then treat other people just like that. Treat other people the way you treat yourself. Love Your Life workshop means be the person that you love. That is, be the person that you most want to be. Now I want to start out today, and I plan to start out every Sunday with an intention. An intention is a positive statement of how I want to be, what I want to practice in my life, what I'm willing to practice. And those two words are important. What I'm willing to practice. You know, so I could have an intention in my life, but am I really willing to do it? When I say, who's the person I most want to be? And I could say, well, I really want to be a compassionate person. Well, am I really willing to do that? Or does that just sound good on Sunday morning? You know, and I'm willing to do it. And now, willing to practice doing it takes a little bit of the pressure off. If I say, well, I'm willing to be a compassionate person, well, the first time I don't react compassionately, I'm going, oh, I failed. Well, of course you did. We're human. But I'm practicing. When you practice, you don't always get it right. You know, when I was a baseball coach, you know, we would practice and practice and practice. And the reason you practice so much is often you practice wrong. And so we would tell them, you know, you ever practice makes perfect. Well, we would say perfect practice makes perfect. So you practice doing it correctly. Because you don't always do it correctly. And sometimes in the heat of the moment, you fall back on old habits. So that's why we practice. So today's intention is, I am willing to practice taking charge of and being responsible for me, my life. Listen to that again. I'm willing to practice taking charge of and being responsible for my life. I'm willing to practice taking charge of and being responsible for my heart, my own spirit, my mind and my strength or my body. I'm willing to practice taking charge of those. I'm willing to practice taking charge of my character, my own character, for my life. Now, you can only, listen to this, you can only be in charge of or take responsibility for what has been given to you, or what is placed in you or before you. You can't take charge and be responsible for something that hasn't been given to you, or that has not been placed before you or in you. And so that's an important element in taking charge of our lives. Now go back to Genesis. And you remember the story, and in the beginning there was, God began to create, and He created all things, and He created man. And there was a difference with man because He gave man and mankind some charges. And so when He created man, He said, okay, here's the earth. Now I want you to fill the earth. I want you to reproduce and fill the earth. And I want you to take charge. Those are His first words to man. Some versions say have dominion, or other words, but I read one version, I think the Message version, where it says take charge. The first words to man as a whole, take charge of the earth. And then when He put Adam and Eve in the garden, first just Adam in the garden, He said, here I got this garden, and He said, I want you to take charge of this garden. Take care of this garden. Be responsible. And by being responsible, He said, everything is yours to eat except for this one tree. I want you to be responsible for this garden. Take charge. He even brought all the animals to Adam to name. Take charge of this, Take charge of it and name the animals. And then He brought in Eve and Adam together, and they had this garden to take charge of. Under this proclamation that God had given to man, why He created a man. Here's the earth. Reproduce, fill the earth, and take charge. He even says specifically, take charge of the animals, take charge of the birds. Take charge. That was the first call to a man, was to take charge. But then we read real quickly about the failure. I was reading about this, and I read a humorous quote from a Lutheran. They said, Adam must have been a Lutheran. Now, I'm not a Lutheran, so I couldn't, but, we could probably apply this to many denominations. But he said, only a Lutheran would stand in a tropical garden next to a perfect, beautiful woman and get excited about an apple. Thought it was funny. But the fall came, the failure came, and the failure was to take charge and to be responsible. And we see that especially when God lines him up, or He comes to the garden, and where's where's Adam? He's hiding. They're hiding. They're hiding in fear. They're hiding in shame. They're hiding. They went from taking charge and being responsible for this earth and this garden to hiding. And then God kind of lines them up, and what happens? And Adam blames Eve, and Eve blames the serpent. The opposite of taking charge and taking responsibility. And the truth is, we can all relate to both sides of that, can't we? We can all relate to the side of feeling like wanting to take charge, or sometimes the good feeling of when we take charge of something, even a moment. And also the feeling of feeling like we've let it slip through our fingers, or the feeling of hiding, the feeling of fear, the feeling of shame, and the feeling of feeling like a victim, and putting blame on on other things. We can relate to that. So how do we deal with that? So how do we take charge of our lives? Because I think that is a call, a fundamental call to every human being, is to take charge. Take charge of your... When Jesus said, love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, in a sense, He was saying, you take charge of that. because we do it by grace. By the gift of grace. Remember the Bible says, by grace you've been saved. By grace you've been saved. We have to, and that is the foundation of taking charge for our lives. Sometimes we look at it as a foundation for letting everything go in our lives. And there is a sense to letting go, and we'll talk about that in weeks to come. But first of all, by grace, we have been saved to take charge of our lives. In spite of our failures, in spite of our shortcomings, by grace we have been saved. And if you read the letters of Paul, who wrote, much of the New Testament, and he wrote all these letters to Christians, and generally in the first part of the letter, like especially Romans, you can see it, in several of the letters, he would spend the first part of the letter just talking about this defining grace or explaining grace in a sense, and and then about halfway or somewhere in the letter, he would move into another area, and he would often use a word like therefore or since. But we see it especially in Romans, exactly, I think it's chapter 12. Therefore. In other words, you've been given this grace of God. We're all sinners. We all mess up. We all have not taken charge properly of our lives. We all fall short of this glorious life that we've been given. He said, now, but you've been given grace. Now what do? He says, therefore, you take charge of your mind. Therefore, you take charge of your heart. Therefore, you take charge of your spirit. Therefore, you take charge of your physical life. You take charge. And in chapter 12, he goes on and where he talks about the renewing of your mind, transforming your mind. And then he starts talking about all these gifts that we're given. Everybody's given a gift. And what does he say? He says, take charge of your gift, not someone else's. Don't sit there thinking, well, if only I was like this other person. He said, you can't take charge of what has not been given to you. But you take charge of your gift. So you take charge of your gift and not someone else's. Jesus talked about that. Remember that story about the three guys, and one was given 10 talents, one was given 5, one was given 1, and talents were money. And then the owner left and said, left him in charge of those talents, and he came back a year later, and the one with 5 had invested them and turned it into 10, and the one with 10 had invested and turned it into 20, but the one with 1 had buried it. And he praised the ones that had taken what they had and taken charge and been responsible with it. Right? And had harsh words for the one who just took what he had, even though it was less, but buried it. Did nothing with it. And so the message was to take charge and be responsible. Jesus wasn't talking about finances here. He was talking about our lives. Being responsible with our lives. And the way we do that, once again, is we understand that what we are responsible with is a gift. Every day, if we could wake up and remember, what I'm responsible with is a gift. It is not my own, but it is a loan. My life is not my own, it is a loan. My things are not my own, it is a loan. My whatever talents I have, whatever thoughts, whatever inclinations are, it's a gift. It's a gift. And also that because it's a gift, it comes by grace. I'm not earning. By taking charge, I am not earning. I'm not earning anything. It's already been given to me. but I'm taking what I have and I'm investing and I'm blessing the world around me with what I have. I'm blessing God with what I have. I'm honoring God with what I have because it's been given to me. It's a gift. It's not what I'm earning. Think of it, instead of earning, I'm not working every day being, like we talked about the rich young guy who felt like he was maybe somehow earning his way, into favor with God. But every day I'm learning how to use the gifts that God has given me. I'm learning how to take charge. I'm learning how to be responsible and take responsibility for me. I'm willing to practice. But it's understanding every day that it is a gift. I'm not possessing. I'm not earning. I'm not owning. But it's a gift. By grace we're saved. Now the mystery of all this, for me, is that this all takes place in a messy life. This all takes place in a messy life. That somehow I've been given a gift of life, but if I were to write the book, and I would write it very differently. There would be no mess. There would be no sickness. There would be no loss of jobs. There would be no family discord. It just, things would fall into place. There would be opportunity and seizing opportunity and good things happening. That's the way I would write it. There would be no mistakes. There would be no lapsing in judgment. There would be no doing stupid things or losing temper. There would be no mess. But in spite, somehow, by God's grace, in spite of the mess, in spite of the failure, in spite of unseen circumstances cropping up and messing things up, in spite of genetics, all right, in spite of family issues that happen, in spite of personality, in spite of all that, that we still wake up every day with a gift of who we are and where we're at, and we have the ability to take charge and be responsible for what we have given. What we are given, what we have at that moment. And it can be a beautiful thing. I think it's part of what Paul was saying when he said, all things work together for good to those who love God. And somehow God works good into everything, even through all the mess. When you take charge of what God has given you, God works for good. And the verse that we talked about before, where Paul says, work out your salvation. Take charge of what's given you. Take charge of this gift, for it's God who works in you. It doesn't say, take charge until something goes wrong, then throw up your hands. And we feel like that sometimes, don't we? He says, take charge in spite of things going wrong. Take charge in spite of we make mistakes. Take charge in spite of the world doesn't turn exactly the way we want it to turn. Circumstances happen. Sometimes very difficult circumstances. Take charge of what you have been given. You cannot take charge for anything other than what you have been given and what you have. We can only take charge of our gift. And the gift is you. Your gift is you. Your gift is you. My gift is not you. My gift is me. Your gift is you. And each of us can take charge of our own. Jesus says, love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. And in our own way, where we're at, we take charge of all four of those areas in our lives as we move forward in our day. So some of us went to see the movie about Lincoln the other day. I've been reading. I've always enjoyed reading about Lincoln, but he was a man who, when he came to be president, when he was elected, was viewed, especially by the political figures in the country, he was viewed as a very weak person. He was not viewed as somebody who could take charge. In fact, he was just called, a second-rate prairie lawyer by a lot of people, even after he had been president for a while. But he began to assemble his cabinet with many of his rivals who were seen as more powerful, smarter, more intelligent, better connections. But he knew that they were the right men for the job, and so he kind of assembled his whole cabinet with people who not only were rivals to him, but many of them rivals to each other. And many of them took those positions thinking, well, this is good because I'm really going to be the smartest, most powerful man there, including more powerful than Lincoln. I'll be able to take charge of this cabinet. But what each of them found out was that this man, who even though he suffered the death of 2 children, one while he was president, who had lived just an unbelievably difficult childhood, lost his mother when he was real young, no education growing up, had suffered a lot politically, had almost had no political successes before he became president, and then had to suffer, leading the country through the Civil War, which is an unbelievable responsibility, and at the same time constantly had to suffer from his own cabinet members talking behind his back, being against him, questioning whether or not he could do the right thing. And yet through all that, what they found that he was a man of strength. He was a man who took charge. He was a man who was responsible for him. And his character never wavered. I'm not saying he was a perfect man, but one thing he was known for is his character never wavered. He was kind to everyone, even his enemies. He was fair to everyone, even his enemies. And one thing that he became known for was that when this man says something, he's going to do it. When he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which was exactly 150 years ago on January 1st, but early in the year, he proposed it and it was accepted. And he said, this is what we're going to do. He stated it, he laid it out there, and I'm going to sign it on January 1st. Well, there were a lot of people who were for it, a lot of people were against it, but many who were for it, some of the more radicals, were like, well, I sure hope he follows through. And Frederick Douglass, who had been very critical of Lincoln, said, well, one thing I know about him, once he says something, he'll do it. And sure enough, he did. But I thought, what a great example to us of somebody who had, his circumstances were a mess. He had to wake up every day and deal with what was in front of him. And one of the hardest jobs probably that anyone in our country may ever face is what he faced. But he took charge. He took charge, and he was responsible for him and for his character. When we take charge, when we practice or are willing to practice taking charge of who we are, our character, our heart, our spirit, our mind and strength, then we discover who it is that we most want to be. And we keep making progress towards being the person that we most want to be. So love the person you are. Be gentle with yourself. If you make this your intention, whatever intention that you make, say, God, I'm willing to practice doing this in my life. Be gentle. There's a verse, I think it's in Philippians, let your gentleness be known to all. And let that begin with yourself. Show compassion to yourself. Be forgiving of yourself. You're going to need to be every day. And then treat other people just like that. Love the person that you are. Be the person you love. And be willing to take charge of and be responsible for you. That's how we honor God. I believe that's the first step in how we honor God and how we love God with all our heart, soul, strength, and mind. All right, we're gonna kind of take that and move another step further with that next week. All right? All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for being our Father, for giving us your love and your gracious forgiveness. And Father, I just pray for eyes and heart to every day see the gift of life that we have and the joy in taking charge of our lives, knowing that it's you who work in us and through us. Thank you for this day, and I just thank you for every person that's here, Father, in Jesus' name.